After a disaster, having the ability to stay informed, being able to communicate with both others locally and with those outside of the impacted area will all be critical. Let's run through some simple, practical options you should definitely have in your prepper inventory.
Download the Start Preparing Survival Guide to help you prepare for any disaster. I'll post a link in the description and comments section below, or visit cityprepping.com/get started for a free guide to help you get started on your journey of preparedness.
If you're new to this channel, my name is Chris, and on this channel we discuss emergency preparedness, aka prepping. Communication after disaster really involves a few key things. First, we need to be able to receive information about what's happening in your area and outside of your area. Next, we need to be able to communicate locally with others in your group and or your family. And lastly, we need to be able to communicate outside of your area. So think about it this way. We need to be able to receive information in, we got to communicate within the area, and then we have to be able to send information outside of our area. So how do we achieve each one of these three goals? What we're going to do is we're going to run through some options on the market that you can pick up today. And some of these, surprisingly, are not that expensive. And in future videos, we're going to cover more advanced discussions like Morse code. But for now, let's look at what you can actually do today. And as we go through each one of these, I'm going to go from kind of the cheapest to the more expensive options, and I'll bring up a surprise option that I'm going to review in the future here on the floor. Now, most of these items, believe it or not, we do carry in our bug out bags. I say that, believe it or not, because we try to have as many communication options, because for me, that's something that's a high priority. We split each one of these up. Some of these that we have, these in all of our bug out bags, some of them, for example, my kids don't have ham radios, but we do break these up across our bags. And before we jump into the discussion, let's assume one thing, that the power is likely down. Again, we're talking about some type of grid down situation, a disaster, natural, man-made, or otherwise, and we need to have and establish a line of communication. And what we're going to do is we're going to talk about a few options at the end of the video, by the way, for charging these devices when the grid is down, because again, if we're down for a prolonged period of time, we're going to need a way to be able to power these. So let's go through these here in front of me. The first one is a phone. Now, I start with this one. It's not the cheapest, obviously. I said it's going to go cheapest to most expensive, but this I carry on me at all times. I always have a cell phone next to me. And let me just point out, if you try to make a call after a disaster and you're not able to send or receive phone calls, don't be despair, because you can actually sometimes still text or, of course, access the internet. Now, that's not a given, but make sure that if you can't make a call, that you at least test out texting. And I would encourage you to do this. In your bug out bags, have a piece of paper with all the phone numbers written down. I have in all of our bug out bags in a big Ziploc bag, I've got a piece of paper that have pictures of all our family members. I've got all of the important documents that we need. I've got, like, for example, animal vaccines. And on one of the pages in this document, I have individuals both locally and outside of our area to phone. And the reason I did that is because if for whatever reason, let's say my wife is out with my children, or there's some situation where we get split up, we need to have a contact person that we can all phone into if we can't reach each other. And again, they kind of serve as an operator, so to speak, right? You're calling out to that person outside of the state or locally, but you have that point that everybody knows that they need to be able to contact. And again, we have a whole plan listed on a piece of paper. Think that through if you're, again, setting this communication plan up, especially for your bug out bag. Also, another little pro tip, I would encourage you to add phone numbers actually inside the back of your phone case with emergency numbers to call, very similar to what I talked about just a moment ago. Have those phone numbers written down and preferably laminated and stick it in here. Think about it. If the power goes down and you're using this and you can't charge it for whatever reason, you probably want to have those important phone numbers written down. We all have gotten to the point where let's just be honest, we rely on our phones to carry those phone numbers. I remember about a handful of phone numbers from my childhood that for whatever reason are just, imprinted in my mind, but whenever I have a friend give me their phone number, the first thing I do is just create a contact, I add it in, and it's gone, right? So make sure you put that down, because if your phone, for whatever reason, is not operational, you want that written down. Okay, so the next thing that we're going to talk about is a small signal mirror. These, you can actually stick this even in the back of your phone case. So obviously they're super small, and they're not that expensive, about $5 or $6. And if you were to get split up or you're lost and there's individuals looking for you, having the ability to make that reflection could be a lifesaver. And there's a set of instructions on the back of this. It's got a small little hole, and it's pretty clear on the instructions what to do. So again, think about this as an option. Again, you could even put that in your phone case. Now, the next option is a whistle. And you may think, well, why would I need this for communication? Again, let's think about in terms of our bug out bag or some situation where you get split up from your group. Having that ability to signal for help if you get lost can be very, very important. And again, we keep this in all of our bug out bags, especially our kids, so they know that they have that option. Now, the next option, when I first got serious about prepping, there's a couple of things I got, and this is one of them. This is just a small hand crank emergency radio. It's got FM, AM, it's got no weather radio stations, and it's got a hand crank on the back of it, which I like. I can crank it up, and I can actually charge other small USB chargeable devices, such as our cell phones. And if you notice, I've got different cords on here, and each one of these has different adapters based on the phone. I have an iPhone, so I have an iPhone adapter. My wife has a Samsung, so hers is micro, I forget C, I forget all the letters. And then we have the old school traditional micro USB. And so all that to say, I like these because they serve a lot of purposes, flashlight, but again, the key thing here is the ability to communicate. We can receive information with this. So a consideration, again, all the items that I'm gonna go over, I'll post links in the description if you wanna check out any of them. Now the next one up is just an old school walkie-talkie. We have each one of these in our bug out bag so that, again, if we get split up, we have the ability to communicate. If you have neighbors in your area that you want to be able to communicate with, you might want to consider these. This is a very small, simple one. This is actually from my kids' bug out bag. But again, if you do use these, make sure that you have the signals programmed, or at least you know the channel that everybody's going to get on. All right, so let's bring over to the next one. The ham radio, and I have the old school Baofeng UV-5R. Years ago when I first got serious about emergency preparedness, I picked up one of these. You can operate these without a license, but I always tell people, if you're gonna pick up a ham radio, get the license, understand how to use these, and play with them, get practice. These will be useful if the grid goes down and different repeaters in your area are still operational. In theory, you could actually communicate pretty far distance out, depending on how well the repeater system is still operational or not. So have this, again, these run for about $25, $30. So they're really hard to beat. I always take the antenna off, put it in a Ziploc bag, and I charge this from time to time, and I keep these in all of our bug out bags. So think about that. Ham radios are very useful. They're very popular within the prepper community for a good reason. Now the next one up is a Garmin Mini inReach. And I've talked about these before on the channel, and I'll probably do a review on these. This was not sent to me. I bought this last year on Black Friday, or a year and a half ago. And these are expensive. They run for about $350. But the beauty of these is that you can actually send text over satellite. So if you're in an area where, whatever the reason, you can't get a ham, not able to find a tower, communicate with a ham radio, you're not able to get information in, go through all the scenarios. This one, in my opinion, at least at the price point, what it can do is one of the best options. Now the monthly subscription on this is roughly, I think, $12, and you can send and receive, I want to say 10 text messages. Not a lot, but I have this in my own personal bug out bag, and when I go off-roading, I have this in my Jeep. It has also a little SOS signal flap that you can pull up and press it, and it will send out a signal with your GPS coordinates. And I've known people that have actually had to use that when they've been in a disaster situation or in an accident and they needed it. Now the next one, and I just got this, I just bought it a month ago. I actually purchased this. No one sent this to me. I wish they did. These were not cheap. But this is a new Starlink. Let me put it next to my head to give you a kind of a frame of reference and size. So not that big. It's very small, portable. You collapse it and you put it on a stand. And I've been playing around with this, and I'll be doing a review of it pretty soon. Super fascinating. The one thing to note though is this does require a power source. The other items that we talked about, they all need to be charged, but this one you actually physically have to plug it into a wall socket or some type of plug in to actually power this. The beauty of these is if the grid goes down and everything else, ham radio, etc., is not operational, this is just regular internet. You can get about 200 megabytes down and 100 up. That's what I've gotten so far in my area. It varies from area to area, but this does require a monthly subscription. And as a bonus, they are unlimited. You can get as much, at the time of recording this video, the data on these is unlimited, but these do require a monthly subscription. So I have different devices. I have solar generators, And let's talk about that now to power devices like this. Let's kind of wrap this conversation up with power sources, because everything that we just looked at here save the hand crank devices. And I didn't mention this one. This is another hand crank radio. But these are great because, again, you can charge the USB rechargeable devices by cranking the radio, or rather using this hand crank, and you can charge this different devices with this. But some of the things I also keep in my prepper inventory is a small solar panel. This is 28 watts. This was sent to me by a company called Off Grid Trek. I've done some reviews on their products before. I love them. They're high quality, not cheap, but I go for quality when I can. This is 28 watts. I keep this on the outside of my bug out bag, and with the USB cord, I can plug this little small energy bank in. I want to say I paid about 25 bucks for this about a year and a half ago. I use this thing all the time, and I can actually plug it in with this when I go on camp out trips. I just plug these two together, and then I can charge my cell phone, which I use to take photos and stuff like that while camping. But in saying that, that is one of the power source options if the grid goes down. Now, I know you can pick up these cheaper on Amazon for around about 50 bucks for 28 watts. I'll probably do some reviews on those in the future, but think from the perspective of if you're building up your communication setup, think about the power. How are you going to recharge these devices? And again, as I mentioned a second ago, with the Starlink, I actually need something more sizable. So that's why you see behind me, for example, I've got these solar, which way is my finger pointing? It always is backwards of the camera. I've got the solar generator here, and I've got one over here. I've done reviews on the channel of EcoFlow, Jackery, Blue Eddy. I'll put a link to a playlist with the different options. There's a lot of great options on the market, but the point is, have a plan to be able to charge these devices when it comes to communication. All right, so in summary, have a plan to communicate after the grid is down. Whether that's going to be a temporary or long-term grid down situation, I've tried to build different layers of both immediate potential grid down situations, and with the Starlink, that gives me the ability, if the grid is down for a prolonged period of time, we go into months, I can still communicate in outside the area and receive information in. Again, everything that we talked about, I'll post links to in the description section below. If you have any thoughts, feedback, questions, anything the community would benefit that I didn't cover, please post that below, because I always learn so much from you guys. As always, please stay safe out there.